Good evening and welcome to Newsfeed. Today is Tuesday, February 19th, 2019. I'm Angelina Breedy.
And I'm Saini Kethareddy. We're excited to have you here watching with us tonight. Let's see what's happening in Ann Arbor.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer delivered her first State of the State address this past Tuesday, February 12th in Lansing. During the address, Whitmer outlined what she believes to be the biggest issues facing the state of Michigan and her plans to improve them during her time in office. Some of her main discussions in the address revolved around fixing infrastructure, supporting education and job training programs, lowering auto insurance rates, continuing criminal justice reforms, and looking at budget outlooks. With Whitmer's gubernatorial campaign featuring the slogan, quote, "Fix the damn roads," end quote, it was no surprise that Whitmer discussed Michigan's crumbling infrastructure as a major issue. Whitmer stated, quote, "Michigan's problems are not partisan problems. Potholes are not political. Our challenges affect us all, and they will require us all working together to solve," end quote. Whitmer also highlighted issues regarding K-12 education and higher education. She proposed her plan for debt-free college, called the Michigan Opportunity Scholarship Program, that would make Michigan the first state in the Midwest to guarantee free community college for all high school graduates. She also urged improvements in K-12 schools, citing reports of poor literacy rates and undervalued teachers. Governor Whitmer is expected to release her first budget proposal on March 5th.
Last Wednesday, internet celebrity and mental health activist Demetrius Harmon held a discussion with students regarding mental health, specifically from the perspective of people of color. The event was part of NAACP Week and Black History Month. Harmon was formerly known for his popularity on Vine, YouTube, and other social media platforms, which he has now used to advocate for mental health awareness. Harmon spoke to an overflowing room of students in a lecture hall, where he said, quote, "It's hard to do certain things while retaining your blackness, and if we're not accepted in our community, we feel like we're not accepted in the world at all," end quote. Harmon also discussed the importance of representation in the black community. Citing artists like Frank Ocean, who came out as bisexual in 2012, Harmon said people like Ocean are important for other black people to find their identities in a safe and accepting environment. Harmon now owns a clothing label with the popular slogan, quote, "You matter," end quote, to spread mental health awareness.
This Saturday, February 15th, on-campus organization Michigan Health Engineered for All Lives, also known as MHEAL, hosted their annual Global Health Symposium. The event featured notable speaker Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, a 2018 Michigan gubernatorial candidate and former health director of Detroit. Speakers from the Center of Disease Control and the organization Blueprints for Pangea were also present. Every year, MHEAL collaborates with Timmy Global Health to put on the symposium. According to MHEAL's website, the team hopes that, quote, "attendees will be able to walk away from the symposium having learned strategies that help them implement change in underserved communities," end quote. Dr. El-Sayed echoed MHEAL's mission statement by describing his experience with the gap in life expectancy between his hometown of Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, and Alexandria, Egypt, where his grandmother lived. Dr. El-Sayed stated, quote, "I was motivated by the responsibility to leverage the privilege that my grandmother so clearly highlighted. I have to address the gap," end quote. He encouraged the 85 attendees to consider their healthcare privileges, as that is what inspired him to pursue a career in public health. MHEAL hopes the symposium will, quote, "foster interdisciplinary work in global health, design, and entrepreneurship," end quote.
Now it's time for a short break. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Oh my gosh, we only have a minute to get to class.
What? Well, alright, I need to go get some water from the vending machine.
I'm gonna be eco-friendly and fill up my water bottle.
Well, I guess I'll see you in class.
Alright.
come on, I just need to get to class.
Welcome back to the show. You're watching Newsfeed. Let's get into our national news.
President Donald Trump announced on Friday, February 15th, that he had declared a state of emergency on the United States southern border with Mexico. Trump's announcement opens up billions of dollars of funding, which he can allocate towards a wall, one of his signature campaign promises. The wall has become a bitterly partisan stumbling block for the U.S. government, pitting the president and many of his Republican colleagues against House and Senate Democrats. The government shutdown, which began on December 22nd of 2018 and didn't end until January 25th, 2019, was largely based on Congress' refusal to allocate the president's desired $5 billion towards the wall. In his speech, Trump claimed that he was announcing a national emergency because we want to stop drugs from coming into our country and we want to stop criminals and gangs from coming into our country. Trump's proclamation evoked backlash from both Democrats and Republicans and has already been challenged in court. Republicans worry it sets a dangerous precedent of executive power and could be used to justify a future Democrat taking sweeping action towards issues such as guns. Democrats argued that no emergency exists and Trump is declaring an emergency simply to come through on his famous campaign promise to build that wall. Congress does have the ability to override a presidential state of emergency, but it would have to have strong bipartisan support, which does not seem to be the case at the moment.
A California man has pled guilty to starting the Cranston Fire, which burned more than 13,000 acres in California last year. Brandon McGlover of Temecula, California, admitted to burning several structures related to the Cranston Fire in an alleged act of arson and was sentenced to more than 12 years in prison. According to the Riverside County District Attorney's Office, he pleaded guilty to 2 counts of arson of a structure of forest land. McGlover originally pled not guilty to the charges, but changed his plea as a result of a plea deal that reduced the 15 charges he originally faced to just 2 charges. McGlover will be forced to pay restitution to the fire's victims. The Palm Springs Desert Sun reported that McGlover used, quote, a barbecue lighter and a can of WD-40, end quote, to start the 9 separate blazes he was accused of setting. The 2018 Cranston Fire, which burned for 17 days before being fully contained, forced over 7,000 people to evacuate their homes. The Desert Sun also reports that one victim, Tim Hammonds, died 3 days after suffering a massive heart attack in the process of evacuating his home, and at least 2 firefighters were injured in the process of battling the blaze.
NASA recently said goodbye to their Mars rover Opportunity. The rover surpassed mission expectations by observing the Martian landscape for 15 years as opposed to its original 3-month mission. Over its many years, Opportunity traveled roughly the distance of a marathon and changed the paradigm for planet exploration. Opportunity was proof that a mobile observation unit was superior to a stationary one. In fact, Opportunity gave NASA something they have never seen before: signs of water on a planet thought to be historically dry. NASA had thought that Opportunity's time was coming as a dust storm had previously covered the rover's solar panels. The storm prevented the rover from recharging its power cells, which caused the rover to go dark since June. At the time, NASA decided they would wait for the storm to pass and attempt one last call out to the rover, which rang out a few days earlier. A member of the mission team, Tanya Harrison, stated that the final attempt to reach the rover was, quote, an incredibly somber moment, just waiting for the inevitable basic, end quote.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back with some international news.
What if you could invest in the future? The future of kids, like a stock. Not the kind of stock that's about making money, but a stock for social change. A whole new kind of investment called Better Futures. When you invest, it helps kids go to college. Believe in us, invest in us, watch us grow.
My name is Sydney, and I'm your dividend.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Hey, I'm Tyler Perry. Do you know what hunger in America looks like? Well, it has many faces, and 15 million of those belong to children. Yet billions of pounds of food go to waste each year, and this is unacceptable. You can be a part of the solution. Join us in supporting the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks, which rescues our surplus foods and provides meals to many families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org today. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
Welcome back to the show. Now it's time for international news. A British teenager who left the United Kingdom at 15 years old in 2015 to join ISIS now wants to return home after the birth of her newborn son. Shamima Begum, only 15 when she abandoned the UK to travel to Syria and join the Islamic State, said, quote, "I feel a lot of people should have sympathy for me, for everything I've been through. You know, I didn't know what I was getting into when I left," end quote. In reference to ISIS beheadings and other acts of brutality, now 19-year-old Begum said, quote, "I started becoming religious just before I left. From what I heard, Islamically, that is all allowed, so I was okay with it," end quote. Her pleas to return have already reaped backlash from the British government. Home Secretary Sajid Javid said, quote, "If you have supported terrorist organizations abroad, I will not hesitate to prevent your return. If you do manage to return, you should be ready to be questioned, investigated, and potentially prosecuted," end quote. Begum has already lost 2 children in infancy due to malnutrition and illness. However, a statement from Begum's family said the girl and the baby are believed to be in good health.
Another unforeseen consequence of Britain's movement to leave the European Union has come into the limelight. Many financial companies are beginning to redeploy their staffs into other branches across Europe. Presently, these movements are happening by the dozens as opposed to hundreds, but could increase exponentially as the March deadline approaches. Many banks are taking part in this relocation because, quote, "they're not going to be caught out again by having all their operation in one city, London, where the actions of one country can upset their operations," end quote. The relocations out of London and into other major cities in Europe, such as Paris, have mixed effect. For the cities that these banks are moving into, it's a good sign for future economic prosperity. For Britain, however, this could lead to further deterioration of an economy already down on its luck. A worst-case scenario has calculated an economy shrink by 8% and house prices plummeting by 30% as the March deadline approaches. Only time will tell what economic effect Brexit has truly brought on the country.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel recently attended a meeting in Warsaw, Poland, put on by the Trump administration. The goal of the meeting was to discuss the, quote, "strategic threat posed by Iran," end quote. Afterwards, Mr. Netanyahu announced plans to welcome the leaders of Poland, along with several other countries, to a meeting in Israel. An interesting announcement considered the frigid history between Israel and Poland. Disdain for each other comes from World War II, as the Israeli government harbors contempt for the Polish due to what they perceive as a lack of resistance to the Nazi influence and the role it played in the Holocaust. Poland would be a strategic ally to Israel, as it would help prevent pushback from the European Union on further matters concerning Iran. However, a comment made by Mr. Netanyahu last Thursday that, quote, "the Poles cooperated with the Nazis," end quote, garnered enough attention by Sunday evening that the Polish government backed out of the meeting. The Polish government attributes its decision to the, quote, "racist remarks made and the continuing sensitivities from both sides about the Holocaust," end quote.
Let's go to Catherine for this week's Wolverine Profile.
I'm Catherine Ragukas with Wolf TV Newsfeed. February is Black History Month, and there are many amazing stories to be told about Black leaders of the past. Here with us today in studio is Morgan Locke, a University of Michigan student with an amazing family story. So Morgan, welcome to the show. I just kind of wanted to start off by asking you kind of what does Black History Month mean to you? Like if you could put Black History Month in your own words, what would you say?
For me, it's personally a time of reflection, a time of looking back on history that's important to me, that's important to my family, to my community, and honestly a time for awareness, because a lot of people aren't aware of Black history beyond Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King. So I just really enjoy educating and spreading awareness about certain achievements that has happened by like famous or well-known Black Americans.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so there's obviously many amazing Black leaders and Black pioneers other than, like you said, Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. I know that you personally have a connection to a couple of them, so do you want to share your story with us?
Sure. One of my great aunts, Ethel Johnson, was the first African American female wrestler, along with her sisters Bab Wingo and Marva Scott. They really paved the way for African American wrestlers in the NWA. She started when she was 18, and then she worked for the NWA for over 25 years.
Oh, that's absolutely amazing. And how do you think that the history of your great aunt and her sisters and their accomplishments kind of shaped the way that you view yourself as a Black woman?
For me, it's really empowering because they were pioneers. They were the first ones. And to have that in my family, it's really encouraging because it's like I can pave the way that no one else has done before. I can create something that's unique and really just achieve anything that I put my mind to.
Yeah. And was Black history something that you and your family talked a lot about as you were growing up?
Definitely. My mom was really big into it. She made sure we knew who all of the Black leaders were during the Civil Rights Movement and current Black leaders. Yeah, my family was very good about that, and we celebrated Black History Month, we celebrated Kwanzaa. We're very into our Black culture.
What did you do to kind of celebrate those types of holidays and Black History Month?
It was a lot about community, it was a lot about learning and just appreciation for our history and ourselves and our families.
Oh, that's awesome. So my last question for you is, I guess, just about your Black identity on U of M's campus in particular. Kind of how do you think being on campus and being a Black woman, like how has that shaped you?
It's difficult and at times it's isolating because it's only 3.7% of students on campus are Black or African American. And I found a way to find community here with lots of friends. There are definitely spaces where I feel comfortable, but at the same time, I realized that this institution wasn't made for people like me to be successful. So I kind of have to navigate myself around that. And so far, so good. I've had a lot of good friends to help me, some really good professors. Yeah, it's difficult, but I think anyone can do it.
Yeah, that is definitely an interesting point, just like when U of M was established, how there weren't Black students, you know, so that is a really interesting point, and I commemorate you for kind of, you know, really embracing your Blackness and kind of, you know, being part of the community, so that's really awesome. Well, that's all we have for you tonight. I'm Catherine Ragukas with Wolf Newsfeed.
Well, that's all we have for you tonight. I'm Siny Catharetti.
And I'm Angelina Breedy.
And you've just been Newsfed.